All right, today we're going to be doing an overview of the Suzuki King Quad 750. First thing I want to ask you guys what your opinion is for an oil change, what brands, what weights of oil you like to use. So go ahead and leave those in the comments below. This is my lineup here. I like the Castrol, the semi-synthetic 1040 oil. Sometimes I use a 2050, but it's just in the winter, it gets cold here. And so I like to use that 1040, especially when it's getting colder. Semi-synthetic has some of the additives that will prolong your transmission and engine, but not as slippery as some of the full synthetic oils is. The Gear Saver, that Bel-Ray oil there, I like to use in the front end. And then on the back end, I just like to use the Kawasaki Gear Wet Brake Oil. And the reason why you do that, and I'll show you when we get back to the back end of this four-wheeler, but you need the wet gear brake oil in the back end because of the brakes being enclosed in that rear gear case. Spark plug is an NGK. Sometimes I'll use a CR6E, just a little bit hotter plug. I'll tell you why in the video why we do that. Kind of goes along with the hard starting problem. And then for an oil filter there, K&N makes a good one, high flow. I've always been a fan of for these these King Quads. Just works well, but about any brand will do on the oil filter. Underneath this cover here is your spark plug. To pull these plugs off here, grab a flat screwdriver, stick it in between the actual plug itself, and then there's kind of a casing around that plug. I'll pull one of these completely out, but like I said, I've already loosened it up just to make this a little bit quicker, but you can see there when you push it together, it widens this area here. Behind here is your spark plug, and a lot of times getting through there above the front right wheel is going to be easier, but that is your spark plug wire there. A little bit of a trick getting that spark plug off, a little bit of a challenge even seeing it. If you can see it right back up in there, this is your front right shock here. But what I like to do is grab a small 3/8 extension, and then it takes a 5/8 socket. And you say, well, this is a metric four-wheeler. Yes, but the 5/8 socket works well. It's a thin wall. I use a 12-point. It's a thin wall socket, so it slides down in there well. If you use a longer extension than this, you're going to hit your steering stem. You're not going to be able to get that socket down in there. So I put these two on there. Then what I do, I'll loosen it up with a socket. And then what I do is put my swivel on there. Just kind of gives me a little bit better grip. And then I start turning that spark plug out at that point. Then what you have to do then is grab a magnet and stick it down in there and pull that spark plug out, and then you can replace it just by carefully dropping the new spark plug down in that hole there. Same process. These two, combination of these two, and nothing longer for an extension. You can drop these down in there and then tighten it up. There are a lot of threads on that spark plug, so you feel like you're not doing anything for quite a while. You are tightening that up. It takes a while to get snug. Front differential is here. Your fill plug and your check plug is here. So this takes a 10 millimeters hex for your fill plug here. A 10 millimeter bolt there is your check bolt. And then underneath there, we didn't pull the skid plate off for this video, but underneath here is a 21 millimeter bolt. So go ahead and pull. There's 4 10 millimeter screws here. You can see 4 of these 10 millimeter bolts will pull this plastic skid plate off. Then you'll be able to get to your 21 millimeter plug, drain your oil there. This is going to be a thick oil, so I suggest pulling these 2 caps. Will help it drain a little bit quicker. When your oil is drained, put that bottom plug back in, and then use either a hose or a special funnel to fill this oil. When that oil starts to come out your fill bolt hole there, you can put your fill bolt hole in, and that's 10 millimeter, and then go ahead and put your plug on. That's where you need to be for full. So radiator here, we've got a reservoir here, a separate overflow reservoir here. Just make sure your coolant is between these lines, and just kind of uses, it's an overflow. If your radiator gets hot, builds up pressure, it'll spit some coolant into here. If your radiator gets low, it'll suck some coolant out of here. So front headlights there. Up top here is a little cover. You can pull on that there, and underneath there is going to be your radiator cap. Make sure your coolant is topped off. We've got a CV shaft here, and boots you want to inspect regularly if they've got any sort of rip or a tear at all, and I'll show you a separate video on replacing those. But if you have any sort of a wear at all or a rip in those boots, if you don't get those replaced immediately, you'll end up replacing that drive shaft. Pull this cover here. Again, there's 3 clips to pull this cover off, and this is your oil dipstick here. And draining your oil, we've got a snowplow mount on this one. We've got a hole for the drain plug here, and it's a 17 millimeter, and it's just right kind of in the center there. It's gonna be a little hard to see, but drain your oil there, and then your fill is here, and that's about 2.3 quarts. Forgot oil filter is gonna be on the front of your engine. I like to pull this clip down here, and then I take and I'll actually bend this up, set it on the tire, but your oil filter is there. Clear back in there, if you can see that. And I don't like that oil draining on my skid plate, so what I do is I'll put a little pan in underneath of that oil filter, let that oil from the oil filter drain directly on that oil pan that's there instead of on the skid plate, because then you're gonna have a drip of oil for quite a while afterwards. Changing the wet gear brake oil on this rear differential here, we've got your fill bolt here, and then underneath the differential, again, I believe 4, possibly 6 of these 10 millimeter bolts need to be removed to remove that skid plate, and you've got a 19 millimeter nut on the bottom of this differential. You fill this rear differential to your fill plug here. So if I pull this off, you will see oil sitting directly underneath of this plug. And there you go there. Oil's all the way up. You see there, if that oil plug was clear up here on the top, that's obviously not how you're gonna fill it. On the front differential, the oil fill plug is a little bit farther up here. That's why you've got a oil check boulder and oil fill mark down below there. So if you fill it up to here, about half your differential is full, allows room for expanding when it gets hot, but also keeps everything lubricated. We've got wing nuts here on your brakes. You don't want pressure on these constantly, so make sure that you've got room for these to move back and forth. That way your brakes aren't constantly being engaged. So underneath the seat here, I'm gonna pull this off quick. There's a latch in the back there you can't see because of my back seat that I've put on there. Air filters underneath here. You've got 2 of these plugs here. Kind of sits right, it does sit right in between your legs. Underneath this is a butterfly screw to pull that that air filter. Again, if you have questions or want me to do other videos on this machine, make sure you let me know those in the comments below. Please answer some of the questions that I've asked. I'd like to get you guys' opinions and what your guys' thoughts are. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching.